I'm Ramir Askew, and I'm with Malai Mitchell, and we are doing a project on the Black Genocide Conspiracy. Our conspiracy, the Black Genocide, over the past several decades, many individuals, organizations, and movements have brought attention to the role of race within the setting of reproduction by highlighting the possibility of a Black genocide. The Black Genocide Conspiracy is the characterization that the mistreatment of African Americans by both the U.S. states, the U.S. government, and white Americans, both in the past and present, amounts to genocide. Relevance of this conspiracy is regarding abortion, which is argued through people, organizations, and movements that the Black Genocide publishes misleading propaganda from a far right perspective, comparing it to Planned Parenthood, to like Nazi Germany and slavery. The Civil Rights Congress, also known as CRC, was the first to formally describe it as a genocide in a petition which it submitted to the United Nations in 1951. In the 1960s, Malcolm X accused the U.S. government of engaging in genocide against Black people, citing long-term justice, cruelty, and violence against Blacks and whites, against Blacks by whites. Some questions that drew from the event are: what statistics are present that display evidence of genocide of Black individuals, and what factors contribute to the Black genocide? Another flaw that was driven from the conspiracy is that Planned Parenthood has practices similar to Nazi Germany, along with traditional practice of slavery. In the United States, the Black genocide is a characterization that the mistreatment of African Americans by both the U.S. government and white Americans, both in the past and the present, amounts to genocide. By establishing Black genocide as a term of conspiracy, it allows the government to withdraw legitimacy from the supported evidence and attention of the recurrent crisis. The Black genocide is deemed to be true based off years of evidence and connections. An element of the conspiracy is that the news is filled with documentation of Black people wrongfully killed by the law enforcement. Black lives treated as though they had no value, and lives extinguished without accountability and without justice. The mass incarceration of Black people testifies to a prison industrial complex that uses Black lives as fuel to feed its profits. The physical, financial, mental, and even spiritual deaths inflicted on Black Americans are evident everywhere. In substandard schools, in the food deserts that leave Black communities without food to survive or thrive, and impoverished neighborhoods subjected to polluted water and air. Our evidence of the conspiracy: the Civil Rights Congress, as we said, was the first to formally introduce the concept of Black genocide through their petition to the United Nations Convention on the Punishment of Genocide. We Charge Genocide, the historic petition to the United Nations for relief from a crime of the United States government against the Negro people. The 1951 publication contended that the United States committed genocide against African Americans, and it supported this assertion using the convention's own definition of genocide. The CRC has cited several documented and undocumented cases of wrongful executions and lynching, the disenfranchisement spawned by Jim Crow laws, and including the broad systemic economic and social inequalities that affect African Americans on a daily basis. We've experienced trauma of cases like Oscar Grant in Oakland, Trayvon Martin in Florida, Sandra Bland in Texas, Freddie Gray in Baltimore, Akai Gurley in Brooklyn, Breonna Taylor in Kentucky, and Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia, to the seemingly unending list of Black people killed by whites operating under the color of law. In most recent situations, civilian George Floyd was killed due to an officer known as Derek Chauvin pressing his knee against him for 9.5 minutes as he couldn't breathe and went motionless, which displayed aggravating factors from the law enforcement.
May we continue to say their names?
Some history behind the conspiracy would be slavery. Slavery is the most commonly believed version of the Black genocide, while there's also a biased belief of abortion contributing to the Black genocide. European slaves thus took advantage of the socioeconomic decay on the continent and set into motion what would become the largest violent depopulation of indigenous people from their ancestral homelands in Africa through a process of chattel slavery in the Western Hemisphere. Throughout the 17th In 18th century, European settlers in North America turned to enslave Africans as a cheaper, more plentiful labor source that indentured servants. Slaves were punished by whipping, shackling, hanging, beating, burning, mutilation, branding, rape, and imprisonment. Punishment was often meted out in response to disobedience or perceived infractions, but sometimes abuse was just performed to reassert dominance of the master over the slave. That legacy of unprecedented cultural violence and chattel slavery that induced what came known as the Black Holocaust. This was a horrible time to be born as a Black individual because they punished any Black person, no matter age or condition. According to U.S. Census data, there were 18,871,831 Black American citizens in 1960. Since Roe versus Wade case was legalized abortion in 1973, abortion has killed an estimated 20 million Black children, more than the entire Black population of 1960. Abortion was and continues to be used to control the Black birth rate, and Planned Parenthood leads that charge. And I will give this part to Malawi.
So a reason why we chose this conspiracy theory is due to all the current events that we see going on in this time. We noticed that a lot of the Black community has been victims of police brutality. We expressed that this topic is a topic that needs to be addressed so that Black lives continue to be protected. Equality is a right that the Black community has been fighting for, not only in our current era, but for years. All the pain and suffering that the Black community has endured to achieve an equitable position in the United States is not enough to the
She's saying it's still not enough for the prejudice, hate groups, and individuals that target Black citizens to this day.
We continue by reading the flaws leading to questionable information, the effects of the economic conditions and access to reproductive health services on state abortion rates and birth rates, talks about how abortions are a result of a variety of factors. Pro-abortion forces have created messaging that reinforces the notion of abortion as a civil right, as seen in a 2012 meeting of the Congressional Black Caucus and Pro-Choice Caucus. Some may argue that there is not a Black genocide occurring because there is a mention of white individuals being killed by the law enforcement more than Black individuals in overall. We look at the likelihood of the genocide occurring, which is more than almost certain due to the amount of Black individuals being brutally and unjustifiably killed by the law enforcement. All people of color should be affected by this catastrophic event. Due to primary hate groups negatively generalizing other races along the Black community. Some impacts that can occur from Black genocide could include mass genocides, riots, civil unrest, civil wars, domestic terrorism, and etc. Large government forces and corporations centrally solely on large government forces and corporations concentrate solely on reproductive control despite other social problems in the past. Capitalism has been guilty of enriching its private fortunes out of the most savage robbery of the Negro people and the most ruthless exploitation of the labor power of Negro working people, both during the era of chattel slavery and throughout the span of the century since emancipation. Notwithstanding all the disabilities and oppression, the excluding and the denial, the segregation and the discrimination. The Negro people are an integral part of this American nation. Negro Americans of all classes are compelled to enter into a struggle against racial discrimination and social consequences. The Black community in its entirety is negatively affected due to this event. Several Black individuals are being killed without justice. The population of the Black individuals are slowly decreasing. Some heroes we like to acknowledge today. Malcolm X was a contributor to keeping the idea of Black genocide alive. He contributed greatly to civil rights and helped shape the Black Power movement in 1960 by advocating for both establishment of separate Black community instead of integration, and the use of violence in self-defense rather than non-violence. He accused the US government of engaging in genocide against Black people, as Ramir stated earlier, citing long-term injustice, cruelty, and violence against Blacks by whites. He favored self-love and Black unity as a methodology to encourage the Black men to stop committing self-inflicted genocide through drugs, alcohol, and crime. Another hero we like to acknowledge is Huey P. Newton. Along with the Black Panther Party, were contributors to keeping the idea of Black genocide alive. He helped the African American nation increase its knowledge of pride and its self-love, along with organizing and training African Americans to protect themselves against official violence. The Black Panther Party purpose was to control Black neighborhoods, to protect residents from police brutality. He produced the theory of revolutionary intercommunalism that describes a method of Black genocide.
Here are references regarding Black genocide. And we just want to say Black Lives Matter. We believe that this is currently, we don't believe that this is a conspiracy. We believe that the Black genocide is currently happening, is just slowly progressing. We want people to be aware.
And by speaking up and using our voices now, we can start a change for Americans and African Americans.
Yes. Black Lives Matter. They always will.